Hey, everybody, welcome back to the Startup Sense podcast. This is your host, Jonah Lupton. Thank you so much for joining us today. Of course, we have another great episode for you. First, though, just make sure you are subscribed on iTunes and Google Play, and that way you never miss an episode. Today's guest is Jay Desai. He is the co-founder of a company called PatientPing. They're based right here in Boston, about 50 employees. Company has raised a little bit more than $41 million from about 7 different investors. Some very prominent VCs in there, including Andreessen Horowitz and First Round and Google Ventures and SV Angel and some other names that many of us are familiar with. PatientPing, or actually, I'm not going to describe what they do because it's a little tricky to explain, but Jay will do that in a second. So let's welcome him to the show. What's up, Jay? How are you?
Hey, thanks so much for having me.
You're very welcome, man. I didn't want to screw up the introduction in terms of describing what you guys do. So why don't you, in your own words, kind of tell us what PatientPing is up to?
Yeah. Thanks. So what we do is very straightforward. We notify healthcare providers in real time when their patients get admitted or discharged anywhere. So just as an example, if you're a primary care provider and one of your patients gets admitted to the emergency room, we would notify that provider so that they can make sure that the care is high quality while they're at the hospital, and then coordinate it after they leave. And so it's a really simple, kind of lightweight service to connect providers, because as we all know, patients get care from a lot of providers, and actually the average Medicare patient sees 7 providers a year, and if those with a chronic condition sometimes see up to 25 or more. And when those providers aren't working together and knowing about each other and sharing information with each other, care can be very expensive and dangerous. And so we connect those providers so that they can seamlessly coordinate patient care through a lightweight, very simple, very straightforward technology.
So maybe this is a silly question, but I'm dealing with a DVT blood clot of my own, so I've been very involved with the healthcare system for the last year and trying to coordinate all my doctors and specialists. It's difficult. No one ever seems to be on the same page. Do doctors even have the time? Like, does my primary care physician, would he really care when I actually went to go see the specialist or when I had to check into the hospital to get an ultrasound? Do they even have the time to care?
Yeah. So the truth is, most of the providers went into the field of medicine to be able to help patients, and so they know that there are definitely patients who, if you're a primary care provider and one of your really sick patients that has an allergy or doesn't have anybody at home to support their care, or is sort of depressed and recently lost a loved one, if that patient shows up at the hospital, the emergency room, there are a lot of primary care providers that would love to be able to just quickly ping the ER and say, hey, let me just give you some context on this patient. You're right, though, that a lot of times they don't have time, and frankly, the healthcare system in this country hasn't really rewarded or incentivized providers to take that extra time to coordinate.
Right.
That's changed very meaningfully over the past several years, where the incentives are such that providers get paid more actually if they reduce the cost and improve the quality, and that's created a huge amount of demand for coordination. But I think there's sort of a raw human emotional desire to deliver really high quality care when you can help. And the good thing is that the reimbursement system now has caught up to meet that need. And I'll add one last point, which is, we know providers are really busy, and we know that that if you deliver technology that's anything but blindingly kind of brain dead simple, they're not gonna use it because they're busy enough. And so we focus on building stuff that's just so easy to use and so kind of simple to join, and kind of obviously valuable, and you don't have to really do too much to make it usable. And that's a huge part of our sort of guiding light.
Yeah, it does feel like providers are slow to adopt new technologies.
Yeah.
Once they get stuck doing something one way, they like to stick with it, even though it may be broken.
Yeah,
Now, you started the company in 2013, right?
that's right. Yep.
And you have a co-founder, David Berkowitz.
Yep.
How did you guys kind of fall into this? Who came up with the idea, and how did you guys start to pursue this idea?
Yeah. So prior to PatientPing, I was working at Medicare at the CMS Innovation Center, and CMS stands for the Center for Medicare and Medicaid Services. So I was part of a group that was helping change those reimbursements that we were, or sort of those incentives to the providers that we were talking about earlier, where we're shifting the system from one where we reimburse for volume. So every time you go to the hospital gets paid, or every time you go to the clinic, the primary care doctor gets paid, to one where we reimburse for value. So that's one where, instead of rewarding people getting more care, you're rewarding people getting high quality care. And so I worked a lot on changing those incentives at Medicare, and this as the demand for coordination started increasing, it became obvious that this was just a basic need of being able to know where your patients are in real time. So if you're a primary care doctor and you've got a panel of 1,000 patients and they're showing up all over the place, particularly if they're elderly, they didn't have any visibility into that. So this was something that we tried to fix at the government. I tried it a bunch of different ways and just saw that there was a lot of issues with the current state of the art around solutions. And so I left back in 2013, moved to Boston, and I actually met David through a class that I was guest lecturing at MIT called Healthcare Ventures, which is taught by a really great guy in Boston named Zen Chu. And David was in the class, and so he came and talked to me about one of his projects after the class a few days later, and I just sort of started telling him about the project that I was working on, and we just completely hit it off. And so I remember one day at Upper Crust Pizzeria in Beacon Hill, he and I were kind of drawing on the back of the pizza box, and really just enjoyed getting to know David first as a person, because he's just a phenomenal human being, and it was clear that he has this wealth of experience. First as a neurosurgeon, which is how he started his career in medicine, but then became a software developer and was at Mass General for about 15 years. Writing code, and so I learned so much from him, and we kind of quickly paired up as a co-founder team, and were able to make a huge amount of progress in a short period of time.
And when did you guys raise your first round of capital?
So that first round of capital we raised back in, I believe we closed that round in March of 2014, and
had you guys launched the product yet, or was that pre-launch?
Yeah, no, we had already gone live with the product. We were servicing our first customer in Boston, and we were generating a little bit of revenue at that point. And so at that point, I'm grateful that it wasn't too difficult to raise that round, because we had already made quite a bit of traction.
So who are some of your first clients, and what does a client typically pay for your service?
Yep. Yeah. So our first clients were these health systems, and we started in Massachusetts. So we had our first clients in Massachusetts, and they were health systems that, and if you think about a health system, say, just pick any health system, they typically have the hospital part of it, and then they have the outpatient clinic, so the doctors. So there's the hospital and the doctors, and our clients are the doctor part of it is typically who we start with, where they'll have a list of patients, and they'll want to get notifications when those patients receive care, at various places, and so they pay us based on the size of their patient panel. Because the value that we're delivering to them is the ability to get this visibility into where their patients are receiving care, so that they can coordinate it and then generate savings on those patients by improving the quality of the care, preventing readmissions, and making sure that they're getting home as quickly and safely as possible. So that's how we charge and make money.
Okay, so. But in order for your service to work, you have to have both sides of the providers, right? Or all providers
right.
on the platform. So, in my case, this my primary care physician will need to be using it, as well as my, the place I go to for my ultrasounds, and then the vascular specialist, so they all can communicate, right? Or they all know what's going
Yeah.
on.
Yeah.
And what are some of the the feedback or case studies you guys have seen so far from clients, or have heard back from doctors? Are they able to now provide a higher quality of care?
Yeah. Yeah. So absolutely. So, it was actually really pretty amazing in the early days because, we had our first customer that said, boy, it'd be really great if you could tell us when our patients show up at one of our competitor hospitals, as well as the rehab providers that patients go to after they get, say, a knee replacement or and these facilities are called skilled nursing facilities. So, it's where you go after a hospitalization. Um, and the reason that they wanted that was so that they could reduce the amount of time that they're in the rehab provider and get them home faster and supported with home care, with a home care nurse. And if they were in a hospital, a lot of the opportunities were to make sure that the follow-up care is happening so that they don't get readmitted to the hospital, which, the readmission rates in this country oftentimes are up, 20%, I believe is a national average for Medicare patients, where they leave the hospital and then within 30 days they come back because something went wrong. When we, and they have great programs in place to try to prevent that from happening. And it's simple things. It's, when they leave the hospital, they'll make sure that the medications that they just got prescribed aren't going to adversely react with something that they may already be on. So it's called medication reconciliation. If they need to get in for a follow-up appointment with the primary care provider just to, kind of tweak the medication, make sure that they're doing a lab test to make sure everything's on track, they'll make sure that the appointment's scheduled and that they're going to come in and they have transport to get to the doctor. So these are simple things that happen, but they can't trigger that workflow without getting the event notification that the patient's being discharged from the hospital. So when we started doing this, people were like, this is amazing. I all of a sudden know where all my patients are in real time, and it's just so much easier because before that, it was, a system of faxes and emails and phone calls and, kind of trying to basically chase the patients to support them. And, the patients, on the other hand, love this because now all of a sudden they feel supported, all the logistics of creating an appointment. It's like, somebody's there to take care of you. So, so it was, we got such great adoption, such really, vocal, excited customers in the early days that our ability to scale from there was really pretty, I mean, I wouldn't say totally easy because it's never easy to build a company in the early days. But we had just incredible support from our early customers that made it easier for us to get into a lot more states and build density in our existing states.
This is Jonah Lupton, founder of Jewel and host of the Startup Sense podcast. At Jewel, we help entrepreneurs and startup founders build, launch, and grow their companies by providing superior technology, marketing, and consulting services. We help clients of all sizes, budgets, and industries. We put our clients in the best position to raise capital, grow revenues, hire employees, and maximize their profits. For more information or to set up a free consultation with our team, please visit our website at jool.net. That's JOOL.net. Have you guys had any requests from family members or people that have, power of attorney, I guess, or healthcare proxies over their elderly parents, possibly, that want to be alerted when their, parents are checked into a place?
Yeah, absolutely. It's something that we want to build, but I'll just give you myself as an example. I live in Boston, and my parents live outside of Chicago, and if my mom had recently a procedure done, and if she needs 3 days of rehab per week, I'd love to be able to just get a note that says, hey, she showed up, to make sure that she's on track with her discharge plan. Same thing applies for for parents who may have kids in college, to get it's a great source of peace of mind when you know that you're going to get alerted if they show up in the emergency room. And to your point, folks who are caregivers, close caregivers, or power of attorney, who want to know if something's going on and they may not be immediately sort of proximate to their loved one. There's a lot of value there. We haven't built that service yet, but it's certainly something that we know there's a lot of value for, and we would love to be able to serve. It's a natural extension of what we do.
What have been some of the biggest challenges so far with regards to building this company? I mean, I'm sure at first was the tech, building the technology, and then the second part of that is, finding the providers and getting them signed up, right?
Yeah. Yeah. It's funny, at different stages it's different things. Like I feel like I'm in a very privileged position here where, we've got a really great product in a great market where that we know there's a lot of opportunity. We think we've become at this point sort of the leader in encounter notification services, and we we got a great board, we got a great team, we got great investors. We just got a lot of wind in our sails. So for me, it's sort of like, let's just not get in our own way, and making sure that we're focusing, prioritizing, not trying to boil the ocean, because it's so easy to just kind of get in your own way. So making sure that we're continuing to be really self-aware, not overcomplicating anything, and just continuing to execute is a big part of our a big part of, I'd say, our challenge, if you want to call it that. Which is why I do say that we're in a pretty lucky position, because I know what it feels like to not have all that. And so a lot of this is just about us, consistently and methodically executing, to keep making progress and impacting our mission.
So talk to us about the team. I know you're about 50 employees, mostly in the Boston area. What's been your recruiting strategy? Are you and how is that team split up? Like, what percentage are technical versus support versus sales and marketing?
Yep. We have kind of a really strong. Maybe I'll break it into sort of our go-to-market efforts and then our product development efforts. So we have kind of our go-to-market team, which is our growth team, which these are folks who are launching new markets, sort of the tip of the spear, Navy SEALs, kind of getting into a new market, building out that relationship with the first anchor, and then once we're in market, it's continuing to build out our presence there. So that's a combination of both growth, sales, business development, and marketing. So that's kind of and then once we launch a market, we're very keen on engaging those customers, delighting those customers, making sure that our net promoter scores are high, and servicing them in a way that they're able to use and really benefit and learn from, kind of the best use of the technology and get the full value out of that. So we have a full team dedicated to our onboarding, servicing, and driving engagement of our communities. So that's sort of, I'd say, the onboard or the go-to-market and service team. On the other end is product development, and so we have kind of our product team that's thinking about what we should be building, what our customers are asking for, and making sure that we're continuing to evolve and improve our product. And obviously, the other major part of that is our engineering team, which is a large and important team here that's continuing to scale our solution, stabilize what it is that we do, but still ship features that are really game changing and transforming how providers are coordinating care with one another while still maintaining the simplicity. I'll sort of keep emphasizing that point. We don't want to overcomplicate what it is that we do, and want to make sure that we're delivering really targeted, important solutions.
How many markets are you guys in right now?
So we're in 8 states. We've got several more kind of on the heels that are going to be coming out here pretty soon. But 8 states today, and it's across the country. So in a lot in New England. So Massachusetts, Connecticut, New Hampshire, Vermont. We're in New Jersey, Michigan, Pennsylvania, Illinois, and we have several more that are coming down the pipe.
How do the big insurance companies fit into this?
Yeah.
Blue Crosses and God, I'm trying to think. When I used to be in the investment business, I used to trade a lot of those stocks. I can't remember who the big ones are right now, but I assume they like this, right? Because if your providers are providing higher quality care, that should drive down the pricing.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I mean, ultimately, the beneficiaries of our service are first the patients, and second the providers. Second the payers. because more coordinated care is less expensive care. So you mentioned price, but cost of healthcare is price times quantity. I think what we do is we really impact quantity. So the patient that was otherwise in the in the hospital is now in the primary care clinic. $7,000 versus a couple $100. The patient who is in a nursing home for 25 days is now home in 15 days, and at $500 a day, if you're saving 10 days, that's $5,000. So those are savings that accrue to the health plans in the region. And so what we find is that as we start getting traction, the health plans really do encourage our adoption across the region, and and it may not not necessarily ours, but just the notion of having infrastructure that connects providers in sort of a seamless way, is really sort of in the interest of the health plan to exist within a region, and so we find that they're great advocates for ours. If we're not in a market yet, the health plan can be a channel for us, a sponsor to bring us into that market, and if we are in the market, they encourage our adoption, but health plans also have their own case management services. This is the other thing that for high risk patients or those who are high utilizers or kind of have complex needs, health plans have case management services, and we deliver our services to them as well, so that their case managers can get real time notifications when the patient's in the emergency room and call and engage the patient in the health plan case management service. So there there's a lot of value that we deliver and partner with, a lot of value that we deliver to the health plans, and then as a result we're able to partner with them pretty closely.
So when doing some research for the call, I found a stat that said over 250,000 people die every year due to medical errors, and I'm sure that probably includes a lot of different things. That might even include surgery mistakes. I don't know, but I would think some of them can probably be attributed to bad communication or untimely communication between providers, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, absolutely. So, there are some times where, as you said, the surgeon, we hear kind of horror stories of the surgeon amputated the wrong leg, and and that either was that they didn't sleep enough last night, or they read it wrong, and or they didn't somebody didn't communicate well, and those are, I don't say we necessarily do much to impact that, but medical errors, just examples of medical errors. We have a patient that we serve who's a child, and he has a feeding tube that he uses to eat, and the patient, if that mother got the feeding tube from the emergency room, it was free. But if they ordered it on their own, it was several $100s. It was a piece of plastic. So we were able to see that this patient was showing up at the emergency room regularly, multiple times per week, just to get that feeding tube, because they couldn't afford to pay for it. This is not directly answering your question on medical errors, but once that patient got in case management, the care coordinator was able to see that the patient showing up at the emergency room. They were able to ask the question, why is this patient going to the emergency room? And it's costing the system, hundreds of thousands of dollars for that to occur. And with the coordination now that was being created, they were able to sort of buy the feeding tubes for this family, so they didn't have to keep getting refills at the emergency room. I mean, these are simple things that create medical errors. A patient shows up at the hospital, they don't have, they bring a baggie of medications, and they forgot to put one of them in there. This is the green pill, this is the blue pill, and they also happen to have seen a cardiologist a while ago who put them on something. They just forgot to bring it to the hospital, and that patient, while they're in the hospital, the provider doesn't give them that medication, and all of a sudden now things start slipping because that information didn't get communicated. These sorts of things that they're allergic to another medication, and they have dementia, and they forgot to mention it. They don't have any caregiver supports at home, so the patient wasn't able to go in to the pharmacy to pick up their prescription. The coverage that they were under didn't the copay was too expensive. They couldn't afford it. Like these are simple things that cause major harm on patients. And when you get people talking to one another and coordinating and just sharing this information, somebody usually knows. And the problem is that somebody is not always there when something bad's happening to make sure that information is transferred. So, I don't know
What is your favorite thing about being an entrepreneur?
It's a good question. I'll tell you, in the early days, so I love solving really hard problems. The harder the problem, the hairier the problem, the more I enjoy solving it. And in the early days, it was largely about the strategy, and our fundamental problem was, if you're one health system and you want to know when your patients go to health system 2, that's okay. Let me actually say this again. Health system 1 wants to know when the patients go to health system 2. Health system 2 wants to know when the patients go to health system 1. Yet they don't share, and both of them agree that this is something that should happen. They don't share because they compete, and that I get, and that makes a lot of sense. Yet they both agree that they should share with each other, and so there's a stalemate in these markets where because of competition, patient care is suffering. And so for me, that to me was sort of the initial spark, was like, how can you break this down in a way that's market driven, organic, gets people to want to share with each other, even though they compete, to create all this value for patients. And as soon as I realized it was a big problem, and that patient care was suffering as a result of it, to me, it felt like if you solve that problem, you've unlocked a lot of value for the community. And so I love that process. I'll tell you, as the organization has scaled, it was an unexpected source of fulfillment and gratification, because there's the company strategy, and there's figuring out the right product for the right market, and product market fit, and keep calibrating and improving it. But then there's the organization. There's the company organization, which is really about people, and getting a group of people to feel motivated and excited and happy to be at work. And we spend a lot of time at work, and if you can create fulfillment from the people who come to work every day, and when they come to our office every day, boy, that's a really fulfilling experience. And so I take a lot of responsibility for the engagement and the fulfillment that our employees derive from working here. And it's hard. I'd say that's harder than the company strategy piece of it, to get that right. But when you do get it right, it's a very satisfying experience, because you see how you can make people's just it's a very motivating experience when you like your job, and it sort of permeates the rest of your life. So anyways, I don't know if that's
what is your number one business goal for this year?
So we have growth and engagement goals. So we want to grow our community and build out our network and continue to expand and basically do more of what we do today. And we want to continue to engage the users that are on our platform. So we have very specific growth and engagement goals that we that we kind of continue to march for. I know that's 2, not 1, so I'm cheating a little bit. But both are really important in what we do, and at any given quarter, one's more important than the other. But overall, I think we're this year we're going to keep making a lot of progress on growth and engagement.
And what is the end goal for the company? Right, you guys have raised a ton of money. Do you think that someday you'll be a ideal acquisition target, or is this a potential IPO in the future?
I'm sure you asked that question to everybody, and there's a way to not answer the question.
It's hard to get a real answer, because everyone says, we're just building an independent company and we'll see what happens, which is probably the right answer.
And I'll try to give you the most honest version of that answer, which is, when I started the company, I thought, well, this isn't potentially a neat little business, and there's these physician groups that want to know when their patients go to rehab providers, and if we do that in 5 states, and we don't raise a lot of capital, and we can probably have a pretty big big exit. And then as I got into it, I was like, wait a second, there's a lot more people who we can benefit from this service. And so, we did our Series A, we raised more money, and I thought, well, maybe we can build a medium-sized business. And then as we started seeing what we were actually building kind of within the community, where this is a very differentiated asset, if you will, where, it sort of becomes the only place where everybody's kind of talking to each other and connected on a common platform. I sort of was like, wait a second, this could be completely transformative for the industry. So at this point, I just don't see. I want to, I think we have the opportunity to build something just totally transformative for the healthcare industry that connects providers to seamlessly coordinate patient care. It doesn't matter where the patient goes, anywhere in the country. If you've got your primary care provider in Texas and you're, skiing in Vermont and, you fall down, you break your hip. Well, we should connect those providers. They should talk. That infrastructure doesn't exist today. And then once you do that, well, think about all the value that you can add. Well, we can take some lessons from what they did in Texas locally and bring those to Vermont and help them improve the standard of care there. Like, there's so much you can do. And so, like I said, the challenges become different at different stages, and, but the opportunity just keeps growing. And for me, like, my life journey is one of exploration and learning and experience. I love every single part of this job and every single part of building a business and of entrepreneurship. And because it's such to be selfish, it's a self-indulgent. It is the most extreme experience to learn about yourself and gain self-awareness, but also just learn about the world. And because I'm so passionate about healthcare and doing things that make the world a better place, which it has to be every entrepreneur's guiding light, because it's too hard if you don't care a lot about that. I can't see us. At least I don't see any line of sight right now into us slowing down or stopping, just because there's so much opportunity for us to continue making an impact in the world and improving patient care.
How long do you think it'll take you guys to get into all 50 states?
4 months.
Really?
I'm kidding. We're gonna go as fast as we can. And I think we've got a really rich pipeline, got a huge backlog. We've got an incredible team that's working hard towards making it happen. And we're not going to stop until we're there. So
I assume as you grow the team, you'll be growing the team more on the marketing sales side, right? And probably people that come out of patient care or have a lot of connections into providers and whatnot in those states you're trying to get into.
Yeah, and the process of opening a new market is probably one of the more complex parts of our sales process. And so that's an important role for us, and we're always looking for people. It's a highly strategic salesperson. That has a large business development component to it. So that's a really important hire for us. But then so once we launch into a market, we just sort of run our playbook. Where we scale it with growth folks, we scale it with operations folks. We sort of build the integrations team to be able to get all the connections built. And it just sort of, we just run the playbook. But then we are going to continue to really, boost and invest and, meaningfully improve the service that we deliver in the market today. So it is both on the growth side, and then our new markets team will kind of bring us into new markets, and then we'll kick off our sort of service and growth and service machinery. But then also continuing to invest in our product and engineering teams to build out what it is that we are delivering in the market.
Fantastic. Last question for you. You guys have raised money from some great investors. I rattled off their names in the introduction, but do you have what is the single best piece of advice or value add that you've gotten from any of your investors to date?
That's interesting.
And hopefully this doesn't get you into trouble with the other ones.
Yeah. I'm trying to think.
Who led your A round?
So our A round was led by Google Ventures.
Okay.
Yeah, and our seed round was led by F Prime Capital Partners, which is and Google on first round participated in that one as well,
Gotcha.
and
Okay.
SV Angel. So it's interesting. God, it's such an interesting question because it's so time dependent.
I mean, because I'm looking, I mean, because Andreessen's obviously in many different industries, same with Google Ventures. I don't know much about F Prime. LeeRink is exclusively in healthcare, right?
Yeah. Yeah, so let me maybe, and this may not be a very, very sort of pithy or fulfilling answer, but I
Hey,
will
no
tell you
worries.
actually the truth. And it's every time we are an enterprise SaaS business with consumer-like network effects in healthcare, and there are great investors in each of those categories. But I have yet to find folks who truly span all three, and frankly, that would just be very hard to do, to be world class in kind of all three of those categories. It's a big pool. So every time we do a round, I've had to build a syndicate of kind of complementary skill sets. So the reason we did the seed round and the Series A with the group that we have is one's a really great healthcare investor, that's F Prime. One's a really great consumer product or consumer tech investor, and that's first round. And Google Ventures, actually, Christian is a very unique person in the world in that he does touch on all elements of both consumer, enterprise, healthcare. He's a physician by training, and so he does touch all three. When we did our Series B with Andreessen and LeeRink, it was a similar dynamic. LeeRink is a Todd Cousins is a very strong healthcare entrepreneur. He knows health IT and kind of how to get health IT products into market better than anyone I've ever met. But he was at Sequoia, so he has aspects of understanding consumer products. Andreessen Horowitz obviously is extraordinary when it comes to network effects. Both Vijay and Jeff Jordan are really great at thinking about network effects and kind of hyper growth. So for me, in board meetings and from our investor syndicate, what I love is actually the divergence of opinions, and kind of because it's so easy to kind of regress to a diluted, point of view that's like, this is, okay, well, this is what sounds right, and that's sort of, and it's sort of a non-confrontational piece of advice, which is sometimes what it feels like we get. But with our board, with our group, they have strong points of view, and as the CEO, a lot of my job is just to filter through the advice that I get and make it context specific for our company, and then make a decision on that. And so I love that we have tension between points of view that are opposing, and it's a very productive tension because people, some people see left and others see right, but they have a strong reason as to why they feel that way, and I can then take that and make it relevant to our business to make the right decision. So again, that may not be exactly what you're looking for, but a more appropriate response to that is, I will say that it's easy to get tunnel vision as an entrepreneur, because you got to put up the goals, you got to target, you have your targets, and we always have sort of the bigger picture in mind. But what I love about the dynamic with our investors is that they do consistently encourage me to think even bigger than I thought I was thinking, and I very much appreciate that about them. So they will take me to places that I'm always grateful for them to do. It's not always the right answer, because you got to balance that against short-term execution.
Right.
But I do very much appreciate that.
Awesome. Well, man, it was really great chatting with you. I appreciate your time today.
Likewise.
And I mean, anything exciting happens, or I mean, there's obviously exciting stuff happening every day probably for you. But if you ever want to come back and give us some updates, feel free. The audience can find you guys at PatientPing.com and on social media. What if they want to connect with you personally? What's the best way to do that?
Yep, JAY@PatientPing.com.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jay. Really appreciate it, and we'll talk to you soon.
Terrific. Thanks so much.
You got it, man.
Bye-bye.
Bye.